If you've watched any of my streams or my tool review videos, then you know I'm a pretty big fan of the Gunprimer Raser. It's a glass file that's curated specifically for Gunpla to give optimal cutting power while still giving a nice shiny finish. I for one personally think it's totally worth the money even though it is a little pricey, but what if I told you there was a cheaper option that I found? Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the DSPIAE Siren file. Now what it is DSPIAE's iteration of the typical glass file. To be honest, I didn't think much of it at first because it was listed as a buffing file. I wasn't really too sure what exactly that meant in terms of filing, but then I finally actually put it to use, and I was really surprised by the results. Not only does this compete with the Gunprimer Raser pretty well, it also comes in at about 1/4 of the price. So we're gonna go ahead and do some comparisons. I'll show you guys some pictures and video snippets of the differences between the two. Then you can decide for yourself whether or not it's worth picking up. So the very first thing that you will notice about the DSPIAE Siren is that it comes with a case. It's a pretty standard case. It's kind of just like a bland plastic case that doesn't really have anything special about it, but it's a case nonetheless, and the Gunprimer Raser doesn't come with one. The second thing is the size. It does sort of fall into the same category as an Amazon glass file. You might be able to tell here on the camera, but it is a little bit wider than the Razer 1.5, and of course it's going to be longer and skinnier than the Razer Plus. And the third difference, which is probably the biggest difference between the two, I'm gonna have to show you some B-roll footage for this. Now, as I've shown you before on the Gunprimer Raser, it's a series of circles, and these circles are what actually cuts the nub on the plastic. However, on the DSPIAE Siren, it's a series of lines instead, and these are spaced apart pretty equally, and honestly, they have a lot of cutting power, and it's kind of surprising. So with the physical comparison out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump into some nub mark removal. And for the parts today, we're gonna be using some leftover parts from the Master Grade Astray Red Frame Kai, and we're gonna go ahead and cut these out with some movie magic. And that should leave us with some parts that have a good mix of small and medium-sized nubs. So I'll go ahead and trim these down a little bit just so there's not a large piece of plastic blocking the way, and we're left with just a pretty basic nub. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with the tried and true Gunprimer Raser, and I'm actually gonna count out the strokes that it'll take to remove a nub. 1, 2, 3, 4. There is a little bit left over that I will trim away, and we are left with effectively no nub there. I'll go ahead and finish off this part with the Gunprimer Raser. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it took us almost twice as long on that second nub. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 will give. So that is one part down, and now we'll go ahead and switch on over to the Siren file. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there is our first nub with the Siren file. Much like the Raser, there's pretty much no nub left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one more for good measure. Last nub, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think that gets us close enough to our desired result. And I'm going to repeat the same process on these two parts here just to give a little more consistency with the testing. And so now that all the nubs are cut, I'm going to talk about the main differences that at least I can notice. We'll see if you can notice on the camera. Between the two, the left side is actually a little bit shinier, and I think that has to do with the fact that the Siren is still rated for 12,000 grit compared to the Razer Plus, which is rated to 220 grit. So that can make a difference on what your build will look like after using the Siren file, but you could also just use some sort of cloth to buff it down to give it a more dull shine. The second thing is going to be hard for you guys to notice because it's more so in the feel of the file. With the Siren glass file, it actually kind of has a more smooth feeling to it. Kind of like you're cutting into the part with a knife as opposed to grinding the plastic away. I don't really know how to explain it unless you're actually comparing them hand in hand, but that's the best I can do. The third thing that I notice is that with the Razer, the shavings end up as a plastic powder, which is pretty typical. I mean, we're used to seeing that when we sand or when we file away something. anything. However, with the Siren, I left this piece a little dusty just so you can see, but the shavings actually come off somewhat stringy, and I'll probably have to get a close-up on this so you can get a better look. And lastly, which could be the deal breaker for you, the Siren gets incredibly clogged pretty easily. I mean, it has a really great cutting force, so it's not surprising that it's actually taking off a lot more plastic at once. But I'm gonna throw some comparison shots up so that you guys can take a look at what each of the files look like without me cleaning either of them. I set them down so a little bit of dust might have settled out of them, but for the most part, that's how much dust gets stuck in them without cleaning them out with a brush. However, it is really easy to use just an old toothbrush head or somewhat stiff bristle brush that you have to clean out the plastic. I actually got this makeup brush recently for pretty cheap on Amazon. This is really good for cleaning out the razor. However, it doesn't seem to work as well with the Siren because the plastic gets so stuck in the grooves. But that is my comparison between these two for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it and I hope you guys learned something. I really wanted to get this video out just because a lot of people are always asking what is a good alternative for the razor. This is a little too out of my budget, but the Siren, if you can deal with the clogging and the additional cutting power sometimes getting in the way, it's a pretty good deal for almost a quarter of the price. And that is it for the video. If you have any other tool recommendations you want me to go over, feel free to put it in the comments below. Don't forget to join the Discord as well. I actually talked about this tool in the Discord a lot sooner than I got this video out because it was so important that I let people know. And as usual, I hope you guys get a chance to pick up one of these files and start building.